Okay. All right. Okay, Timothy, might close the door there, please. Okay, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots, members, supporters, and the media. You are very welcome to our conference today, and I do hope you have an enjoyable time. I want to make an announcement on behalf of the party. It's 1 year to this day, and the passing of one of our members, Tommy Atkinson, and he was a member of the Mid-Ulster branch, and he was a good and he was a loyal man. I think it was appropriate just to mention that this morning. Also, at this point in our conference, I'd like to take the time to reflect on the ongoing war in Ukraine, where we have witnessed the invasion of Russia, and we as a party would like to send our support and solidarity to the Ukrainian citizens and all those who are currently fighting for their freedom. We'd like to pay tribute to those who have sadly lost their lives in this war, and we hope and pray for the safety of the many women, children and their families who are desperately fleeing for their safety. So can I ask you all please to stand for the national anthem of Ukraine to show our support during this difficult time. Okay, so today we have a fantastic lineup of speakers who are going to address a wide range of topics, and you will be able to get an idea of what the TUV are all about. It also gives you an opportunity to meet and hear some of our candidates, and to top it off, as I mentioned, buffet lunch free of charge. I still to say, take on board our leader's comments. Okay, so looking back on this time last year for unionism, it was pretty good. Northern Ireland was meant to be celebrating the centenary year, and the executive couldn't even secure a single penny to mark this occasion. Also, this time last year, some political unionists were only starting to understand the constitutional ramifications of the protocol. And mind you, before they got to that stage, they were implementing and operating it. I say unionism deserves better, and TUV are ready to deliver.
Here.
This election will be a battle for the Union, the preservation of Northern Ireland, and it will be a defining moment of our generation. TUV have become an electoral fighting machine out of true grit and determination, and it gives me great pleasure for the first time to provide each constituency in Northern Ireland with the opportunity to vote for a TUV candidate at the next election. I'd like to introduce you to each of our candidates. John Gordon of North Down, East John Ross, East Belfast. Ron McDowell, North Belfast. Andrew Derman, South Belfast. Jordan Doran, West Belfast. Norman Boyd, East Antrim. Myself, Jordan Armstrong, East Londonderry. Alex Ellett, Fermanagh and South Tyrone. Elizabeth Neely, Foyle. Lorna Smith, Lagan Valley. Keith Radcliffe, Newry and Armagh. Councillor Matthew Armstrong, North Antrim. Our party leader, North Mel Lucas, South Antrim. Councillor Harold McKean, South Down. Councillor Stephen Cooper, Strangford. Aaron Foster, Upper Bann. Trevor Clark, West Tyrone. Last candidate, Jack Platts, Mid Ulster. Thank you. So, today, this is my first conference as the chairman, and it is a great privilege to be the chairman of this great party. As was mentioned, now in its 15th year, it is a party of principle, it is a party of strength, and it is a party of integrity. A party that can be trusted to do what is right and to stand by the people of Northern Ireland. A party of principle, and TUV was formed on principle. And it continues to this day to stand on principle and will deliver for unionism on principle, not expediency. We will not be swayed by opinion polls, but do what is right for unionism. Nor will we put party before country. It's time unionism gets delivery. No more concessions for the perks of office, as unionism has nothing left to give. TUV occupy the ground forsaken by those who, for the sake of office, sacrificed their principles, and those who have been wedded to the office have lost unionism majority of Stormont, agreed to an Irish Language Act, voted a criminal convicted criminal and a Speaker of the Assembly. It enables Sinn Féin to veto any celebrations to mark the centenary of Northern Ireland, and that every election facilitated and sustained a Sinn Féin joint First Minister under the control of the Irish Army Council, and they have shamefully implemented and facilitated the Union Dismantling Protocol. TUV won't genuflect to the Pan-Nationalist front for the purpose of office. We are proud Unionists, and we will stand tall. We are unapologetic of our opposition to the farce of Stormont that passes for government, unashamed to stand up and call out Republican terrorism for what it is, and we will continue to fight for the principles of democracy and justice. Party of strength. Over the past 18 months, TUV have witnessed our party membership soaring. Support has come right across the province, as many people have seen the TUV as the authentic torchbearers of unionism and the strength of purpose within the party to ensure that Northern Ireland continues to stay as an integral part of the United Kingdom. Consistent and steady polls that has put the TUV in double figures, clearly showing that we are a major political party in Northern Ireland, expected to make significant gains at the next election. And I say to the media here today, and we will expect to be treated as one during the campaign. Many, however, say they don't believe it. These figures in the polls, the upsurge in the membership, goes against the narrative of the mainstream media and political pundits and academics. They believe they must do all we can to ensure not to rock the process.
No surrender.
Some joke and they scoff at Jim, the one-man band. How mistaken are they? Jim is not a one-man band, and as you can see by the number of candidates today waiting in the wings, Jim is the conductor of an orchestra, fine-tuning a masterpiece to the heartbeat of Ulster. Protestant, Unionist and Loyalist activists, they have set the political agenda, when others have sleepwalked right into a constitutional change. A situation that makes a mockery of unionism's supposed consent within the Belfast Agreement. And we have sought to use and encourage others to use every political tool as a leverage to frustrate and defeat the Union Dismantling Protocol. But sadly, there are suggestions of those who signed up to a joint declaration which will an ultimate position opposing the protocol, looking for its complete removal and wavering, potentially moving the landing zone. But now is not the time to waver. Unionism is at a critical juncture. Now is the time to be resolute, clear in the direction of travel, and determined to see it through. TUV is a party of strength within the Union. Our party as a whole is strong, and we are united in the direction that unionism needs to go. Our strength is in our principles to do the right thing, not out of party preservation. To strengthen our hands at the next election, and to defend unionism and to find unionism for decades to come. I also mentioned that TUV is a party of integrity. What does it mean to have integrity or to advocate for integrity? When you look at the meaning of integrity in the dictionary, it says the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. And I believe this definition describes TUV quite succinctly. As we advocate and accept as true that integrity is vital when it comes to good government. And TUV are all about good government. A democratic government aimed at preventing corruption, fostering high standards of behaviour, helping to reinforce the credibility and legitimacy of those involved in policy decision making, safeguarding the public interest and restoring confidence in the policy making process. And TUV have delivered on this pledge and will continue to build upon it. We delivered the Function of Government Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, which was passed into law, and it sought to address many of the issues which came to light as a result of the RHI inquiry. TUV have passed judgment on what has been portrayed as good government. We've sought to build trust with the electorate and what we will do if elected. It's time to send a strong team to Stormont. Think about what multiple TUV MLAs could achieve. Yeah. We are a party of principle, a party of strength, and a party of integrity. Thank you very much. Thank you. For many, our next speaker, he needs no introduction. A former MP for East Londonderry, a true unionist, loyal to the cause, and a man with lots of stories. So it is with great pleasure to introduce you to our party president, William Ross.
Disappeared from the TV screen that some folks still remember you. But may I say one other thing? One of the proudest moments of my life was to be the Unionist Member of Parliament for the City and County of Londonderry. The second one was to be the one politician who defeated John Human in an election. To welcome you all here today, and I think it is also fitting that we started this with remembering another country that is under threat, under attack by people who want to take it over, just like ourselves. That's the position that we have been in for a very, very long time. And I was also pleased to see that we were asked for a slight subscription, because I remember the old Roman comment that gold is a sinew to war, and they can't be won without them. Now, what is this party's job, ladies and gentlemen? You're here not for a party. You're here to do a job, and that job is the preservation of the unity of the United Kingdom. That is what unionism has always been about. That is what we believe in. And there have been times in the past when that was demonstrated by the whole unionist Protestant community. The Great Convention in the 1890s, I still have my great-grandfather's badge that he wore at that. There are not many of them around. The Great City Hall Rally, whenever Margaret Thatcher betrayed us. There are people, town and country, from top to bottom of society, unionists of every stripe were united. I would to God that that unionist unity is exhibited again in this coming election. Our opponents, our enemies, have attacked us in every possible way: political, lies and deceit, and send some people to the troubles. Trouble be damned, it was a bloody terrorist insurrection. Trouble is not a term which unionists should use. We should call it for what it is. And you see, town the other day, the wife as usual sent me off to buy milk or something. And I was coming down the street of Dungiven. And we had a man that I'd known since childhood, a bit little friend from West Belfast here. His name was Liam. You're quite likely to meet a Liam or a Seamus or a Sean in the streets of Dungiven. And I said, how are you? Oh, he said, I'm grand, boy, I'm grand. But me and the wife, we're both in the old COVID, you know, but we've got better. And I come home and I said, you know, Chris, I met him, you know, the young street, and he's like an old done man. And she says, have you looked in the mirror recently? And that set me thinking a wee bit of arithmetic. And whenever I worked it out, it was just 63 years from I attended my first political meeting. And I come home the secretary of the branch. Maybe some people thought I was scraping the bottom of the barrel. And you know, folks, I've been at it a long time. I've seen more disappointments than most. I've heard more lies than most. I've been misled. I've tried to mislead me more than most. And yet, whenever I come here today and I see the old faces, the old comrades, the people who have shown what it is to stand, I also see the young people. I see a wonderful cast of candidates. I see men and women who knew they had to stand up. And I wondered why it was that Her Majesty's government seems to have long ago forgotten what the first duty of that government was. It is to defend the Queen's realm. That, my friends and colleagues, is far more than territory. It's far more than territory. I remember Ted Heath, leader of a party that had had the loyal support of the Ulster Unionist members of Parliament for 50 years. He cut their throat.
That's right.
He could never stop it. We have seen the dogma of our enemies. We have seen the price that's demanded, the same price that's been demanded of Ukraine today. Surrender or we will destroy.
That's right.
I remember the Anglo-Irish agreement. And we were accused, of course, at that time of not knowing what was going on. Try these words for not knowing what was going on. The late Enoch Powell was sitting beside him when he stood up. And he looked down at Thatcher and he said to her, does the Prime Minister know? And if she does not know, she soon will know that those who deal in treachery soon fall into public disrepute. Those are not the words of people who are not aware of dangers. Those are the words of people who knew there was something nasty going on. And the other person who warned us was a former Labour Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I remember the Unionist Party Council meeting whenever the Belfast Agreement came up. I was one of the principal people who opposed what was before the council that day, because we all walked in and a copy was sitting in the seat. Nobody had time to read it. We were asked to accept it, and I said, look, this is a complete change of policy. We have always opposed car sharing. This is a complete U-turn. My proposal is that we stick to the policy on which we have been elected for 20 years. We are against these things. But, you know, it was only a wee change, they said. Only change. Sometimes what is sold to you is of little importance. You should be very, very careful if your enemies are selling it to you. And we have become here, I remember when they voted that day in the Unionist Council, there was nearly 30% of the party voted against it. People forget that. Whenever the referendum came, there was 28% of the population of Northern Ireland voted against it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is more than half of the Protestant population. Certainly there was no wholehearted acceptance of what was done at any time. So friends, whenever those times were over, there was some dark place and I felt very, very lonely. But then so often, and this has happened very recently, when the evil day comes the man, comes the leader. Thank you, sir. Jim could have done what so many others done. He could have gone and sat in the corner and lamented about it. He stood up. He provided leadership to the unionist population of this country. Go you down any street in any town in Ulster today, and what meet unions and what he did. Jim's the right man. What he says is right. Well, I say to them, if that's what you believe, let your vote follow your voice. I've been there and I've done the most of it. I want to say to your candidates, some of you, I'm sure don't know me, that I've been there. And whenever your party betrays you, you're in a very lonely place. Jim Morrison didn't leave the DUP. I didn't leave the Unionist Party. They left the principle. I say to everyone here, and especially to your candidates, you have made a decision. You want to stand up. It's a personal thing. The people in my generation did their best. I apologize for not doing that. The torch is yours.
Our next speaker is an Armed Forces veteran who served our country for 12 years, both here during Operation Banner and abroad, in more recent campaigns whilst in RAF. A mother, and is currently studying for an undergraduate degree at the Ulster University. I'm pleased to introduce your candidate for Lagan Valley, Lorna Smith.
Never before has the threat been so real. As we face another election, we once again face the same misleading scare tactics from those that place power over principles, from those desperate to maintain a dysfunctional administration in Stormont. As a result of the St Andrews Agreement agreed between the DUP and Sinn Féin IRA during secret talks in London in November 2006, the party with the most assembly seats automatically becomes eligible to nominate a First Minister. This is opposed to the largest tradition, as previously agreed in the disastrous Belfast Agreement. This was agreed by the DUP, not for the sake of our country, nor was it done in the interests of unionism as a cause. It was shamefully done in the narrow interests of their party. for self-preservation. The truth about Sinn Féin IRA becoming First Minister must be addressed. There is no legal or practical difference in the roles of First Minister and Deputy First Minister. One simply cannot act without the other. The old line, "You must vote DUP to keep Sinn Féin IRA out," is tiresome. It's false, and it has been used to blackmail the unionist electorate for far too long. It all comes down to one thing. Sinn Féin IRA cannot take position as First Minister unless unionists nominate a deputy. A question has been posed to both the DUP and UUP regarding this repeatedly. It is a remarkably simple question, and yet it is the most important question that either party will ever be asked. Will you nominate a Deputy First Minister should Sinn Féin IRA become the biggest party? The silence from both parties is deafening.
Shame on them.
Shame on them.
The TUV have answered that question. We have been loud and we have been clear. We, the TUV, will never sanitise, nor shall we partner the political wing of the IRA. And we shall never nominate a Deputy First Minister to allow Sinn Féin IRA to hold the title of First Minister. I have the honour of carrying the TUV standard in Lagan Valley. That means that I will be on the ballot paper alongside a former First Minister and a DUP leader who says he wants to be First Minister. But the difference is that I will be the only candidate going into this election providing unionists with a rock-solid guarantee on the issue of a Sinn Féin IRA First Minister. If only the DUP and UUP could bring themselves to join myself and other TUV candidates to ensure that Northern Ireland will exist for the next 100 years, we would be in a much stronger position. I have taken a stand for my community. I stand for the Union, and I stand to ensure that Northern Ireland does exist for the next 100 years. It is up to us to ensure that those who fought and died in the name of Northern Ireland and in the name of the Union did not die in vain. It is also up to us to ensure that not only our generation, but the generations that follow have the ability to call Northern Ireland their home. That they can identify themselves as Protestant, as a Unionist, or as a Loyalist without fear and without shame. We will not fail this generation, and we will not fail those that follow. We will not allow Sinn Féin IRA to take the keys of Northern Ireland whilst expecting Unionists to act as their doormat to wipe their feet on. We will not empower Sinn Féin IRA by sitting alongside them in the executive government in the very place that they wish to destroy. To vote TUV is to vote for the best guarantee for unionists in this matter. It is time for change.
Our next speaker is the party vice chairman, the deputy mayor of Mid and East Antrim Council, and one of the new generations of able and effective unionist politicians. They are the current leader of the TUV group of Mid and East Antrim Council, a prominent figure in the local Orange and football fraternity, Councillor Matthew Armstrong.
Good morning, conference, and I thank the
Chairman, for the kind words. I've never had such an eloquent something said about me before. Just I love at the last. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some words which always manage to find their way to prominence in times of an election. And I have no doubt that this year will be any different. What about change, or reform, or alternative? We've all heard them, we've all read them. Now you hear them from the Unionist Party, which means them. We all know all too well that Stormont in its current guise does not serve the best interests of Northern Ireland or her people. We know that it lurches from crisis to scandal. We know that through mandatory coalition, government cannot function as it should, and that our electorate do not have the opportunity to vote a party out of office. And whilst for a generation that has been the case, and there have been many around us who have placed you under the system which perpetuates dysfunctionality, in reality they have done nothing. In answer, TUV, long-time opponents of how the business of our province is transacted, can present not one, but two workable alternatives for lasting change and reform. Firstly is Plan A. With no party big enough to govern on its own, coalition is inevitable. As elsewhere, for it to work, it must be a coalition of the willing. Those after an election who can agree a programme for government on the key economic and social issues, and who together can command the requisite majority in the Assembly, form the government, whoever they are. Those who can't agree, whoever they are, form the opposition, challenging and presenting an alternative at the next election. To ensure cross-community involvement, TUV would accept a weighted majority in an Assembly vote to approve the new government and its programme. Secondly is Plan B, and the key to preventing the collapse of the present failed Stormont, meaning the end of devolution, is to salvage that which has worked and jettison that which has failed. By its nature, devolution embraces two distinct aspects: legislative devolution exercised by the Assembly and executive devolution exercised by ministers. Analysis of the failure of the present Stormont throws up the obvious conclusion that it is the dimension of executive devolution which has failed us all. Legislative devolution has been reasonably successful both in presenting bills and processing them, including private members' bills, and in performing the scrutiny function through its committees. Thus, in moving forward, there may be merit in building on what has been succeeded by preserving legislative devolution while giving time for the executive devolution to evolve into something workable. In practice, how that would work is that the British ministers would introduce their legislation to the Assembly. They would pass through the normal processes of second stage, committee stage, consideration stage, and final stage before being signed off by the Secretary of State and given royal assent by Her Majesty. But ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. With all that has gone before, it is no secret that this election is the most important poll in a generation, if not our lifetimes. Look at the success of just one TUV MLA, our party leader, and imagine what meaningful change. Imagine what meaningful change and reform multiple TUV MLAs to achieve together. Let me be further clear, members. We will not go to that place on the hill to play happy families, nor to assent to the rotten practices of the old just because they have been so since the Belfast Agreement or St Andrews. We will go there to work for the people that send us, the electorate, the people who seek good governance, the people who have been so badly failed by a system that is clearly unfit for purpose, the people who have said enough is enough. And at this time, like so many other periods in our history, we face danger, toil and snare, but nonetheless stand with courage in our convictions, led by principle and guided by what is right. Whilst others may seek to maintain high office at any cost, TUV are clear that the price of doing so is already too high and cannot further be paid. We stand 19 candidates in this upcoming election, 19 individuals who are willing to force the same agenda of change and reform, that so many others have delivered so little upon. 19 individuals who entered politics for principle, not power. Conference, as polling day draws near, I trust we will all join in the effort which delivers a real breakthrough, where not only have people hoped for change, but they have voted for it too. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a native of Castledare, born and raised, attended Edwards Primary School in Castledare and Grammar School, a former councillor of the Causey Coastal Glens Council, and has played a significant and active role in Durham Victims United. I'm pleased to introduce Trevor Clark, your West Tyrone TUV candidate.
Chairman, and good morning, conference. It's my very great pleasure to be amongst friends and colleagues and a party united in purpose, and which is led by a man of irrefutable resolve, unquestionable principle, and unwavering commitment to maintaining Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom. It's an honour to address you as TUV's candidate for West Tyrone, ahead of an election in which I believe the party will achieve success. It will leave some wondering why they didn't see it coming. Maybe, ladies and gentlemen, it's because they don't want to see it coming. Conference, I welcome the opportunity to speak to you on the issue of victims and survivors of the terror campaign, because I believe the years of terrorist violence, under whatever badge or guise, have created a legacy that has not been dealt with fairly, equitably, or satisfactorily. As a starting point, I think we can all agree, terrorism of any shade profoundly affected people, families, and communities right across Northern Ireland and indeed beyond. Hundreds of lives were taken, families ripped apart, and communities divided, and a wholly avoidable rampage of violence. It is unquestionable that the interests of victims and their families must always come first, and any process intended to deal with the legacy of the past. That is where the various approaches to date have failed and are failing. This must change. Even today, ladies and gentlemen, even this morning, thousands of people continue to because the political agreements put in place to placate and persuade terrorists to end their illegal and unjustified violence have focused on the agendas of the victim makers. Those who served our community as members of the UDR, the RUC Reserve, the prison service, and the regular army were deemed legitimate targets perversely by terrorists because of the day job that they carried out. People were targeted because of their religious denomination or political affiliation. And those who found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, all and their families are victims who need help and support. And it is only, ladies and gentlemen, in more recent times that organisations such as the South East Fermanagh Foundation, and Kenny's here, and we'll talk to us shortly, have established and developed to the point they are now able to offer valuable services to innocent victims of terrorism. But conference, as necessary and as valuable as support services are, they should never be considered as an alternative to what many victims and survivors and their families want above all else: access to undiluted truth and justice. The Westminster Government's current legacy proposals would remove those prospects, however remote, amounting to an amnesty for those who brought such destruction and harm to so many. This is utterly shameful and must be withdrawn without further delay. Conference, I want to put some of what I've been speaking about in context, because What happened in the past is real and it affects people today. The IRA's callous campaign of terrorism hit hard along the border, particularly in my home town of Castlegar. During the early years of the Troubles, the Provisional IRA wreaked havoc upon the town centre in a fierce and relentless bombing campaign of around 80 attacks in a small market town. And in a community of around 6,000 people, the IRA murdered more than 30 people who were from, lived or worked in Castlegar and its rural hinterland. One of their first victims was a Roman Catholic, shot dead alongside his Protestant work colleague, who had been a sergeant whilst they served together in the Ulster Defence Regiment. Another early 1970s victim was an atheist bomb disposal officer, killed as he attempted to disarm an IRA device abandoned close to a Presbyterian church. The remainder of those murdered by Republicans in Castlegar were from the Unionist community, and they included the first UDR soldier and the 100th and then youngest RUC officer to be murdered, as well as a grandmother of the UDR Greenfinch. The IRA murdered men starting out in life and grandfathers on the brink of retirement. They shot fathers in front of their sons and killed sons in front of their mothers. They ambushed family men going to work in the morning and young men coming home from a night out with friends. They hid bombs beside the bodies of their victims and phoned parents to gloat at the murder of their child. Conference Castlegar's story isn't unique, but the Unionist community there suffered enormously. Each murder or bombing prompted calls for tougher security and a crackdown on the terrorists. And after any ensuing surge in security force activity had faded, the inevitable next attack followed. A seemingly unbreakable sequence of violence and horror continued. And the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that 95% of murders linked by motive and tactics carried out in a small town in a short period of time remain unsolved is a cataclysmic failure of our criminal justice system. What's even more remarkable is the continuing failure of the agencies of the state to address the investigative failures of the so-called Troubles and revisit these today. Whilst the Police Ombudsman has reported recently on its investigations into accusations of state collusion in murders stretching from Castlegar to Coleraine, it has done nothing to address the obvious, the 15 murders carried out by the same terrorist gang in a small town over a 6-year period. This is unsustainable, unfair, and totally unjust. As former British soldiers are being pursued in relation to allegations about misconduct during their service here, keeping the peace, there is no similar examination of the role of the Irish state in the Troubles. This included negligence that eased the IRA's ability to conduct terrorist operations and thereby prolong the violence, as well as active assistance that created victims and continues to deny justice to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, a key reason for the IRA's ability to wage such an incessant and deadly terror campaign in the area of the border was because of that border of the Irish Republic. A myriad of unapproved border crossings, officially closed but often passable, created a huge tactical advantage for the terrorists. IRA terror gangs were able to come and go as they pleased, launching deadly attacks in Northern Ireland before melting into the safety of sympathisers' houses in the Republic of Ireland. In that safe haven, they were also able to build bombs, store weapons, train and rest up, largely because of the indifferent attitude of successive Irish governments to the issue of border security. This is demonstrated not only through the permeable nature of security on the Republic side of the border, but also by the Irish constitutional position on extradition and the arms crisis involving Irish ministers. So, Conference, it's easy to see why the vast majority of IRA gun bomb attacks and targets in Castlegar and in many other border areas could emanate from or conclude in the jurisdiction of the Irish Republic. And it is clear that the relationship between the Irish state and the modern IRA is persistently overlooked in analysis of legacy issues, and it deserves much greater attention. is deserving. That collusion is deserving of open and transparent investigation. This cannot be allowed to drift into the default position of the Irish state, effectively banking victims who have suffered and suffer because of its actions or inactions. Conference, the people of Northern Ireland have endured much, and many families continue to bear unimaginable pain as a result of the actions of others. To remove any prospect of justice is a step too far in any first world democracy. New approach, ladies and gentlemen, is needed, and it is needed now. Thank you.
Folks, just a wee help on our live stream. If any around the net can log on, please. It's just a couple of minutes, well, just a wee pointer, please. Our next speaker is a native from Cross Glen. That was quite interesting in the research on Kenny. He started working with the victims of terrorism since 2005 and within a rural support network. He's currently a spokesman for Innocent Victims United, which is an umbrella body for 23 victims groups, and is currently the Director of Services for South East Fermanagh Foundation. He's brought some of the quilts today. Go and take a look at them. They're very colourful and quite big, so it's great that you can bring them along today. So it is with a great pleasure that I can introduce Kenny Donaldson Mbe.
Thank you, and every 3 hours is still sort of embarrassing me, to be honest with you. There is maybe too much Cross Glen in me. Can I begin today by thanking your party leader and your president and all our officers of this party for the invitation to me. But I understand it's more so an invitation to self and indeed to innocent victims and survivors of terrorism. And I'm very conscious that in this room there are many, very many of you that fit that bill, unfortunately. I want to thank Jim and Trevor Clark and others for their steadfast voices in representing these issues and for being allies in the cause of practically challenging the rewrite of our history. I've been asked by the organisers to speak on the following theme, and actually when Trevor was speaking there I was realising some of my content he's also spoken of, so I'll try to adapt accordingly. Resisting the rewriting of history and ensuring the voice of the innocent is heard. I understand the latter to mean this simply, that innocent victims have not been well served by the system over the years. When those grievous murders were carried out, too often the following was said: leave it with us folks, we will resolve, we will ensure that no stone is left unturned, and you will receive justice for your loved ones. I think by all of us in this room the assessment that has not worked. It has failed. And what we're about as an organisation is principally the empowerment of voice for victims and survivors to reclaim control of their own story, not have it told for them, not have it told about them, but that they themselves can best represent that. And thankfully, in this last decade particularly, we've saw a marked change in that particular issue. I was thinking today, coming down the road, looking at one of our quotes that is displayed there: terrorism knows no borders. And obviously the theme of today, which will be spoken about, I've no doubt, by your party leader. So much time will be spent talking about borders today. And so much of what we become impassioned by is about territory, sovereignty. Those things matter. They matter to me also. But isn't it the truth that perhaps the challenge for those of us who do care about these issues is that for an argument to prevail for a sustained period requires the unity of people. That means that those who extend themselves, bringing their core base with them on that journey, will ultimately define these issues. The policy of the Stormont government has been one of Carvel, PUL and CNR, those crude, horrific breakages. Protestant, Unionist, Loyalist, Catholic, Nationalist, Republican. And that is principally the lens by which matters connect with Brexit and the RC border are viewed and contested. And we all understand and appreciate that. But for issues of victims and survivors and legacy, I submit to you today that there is a very different them and us at play. Them are not necessarily Catholics, Nationalists and Republicans, and us are not necessarily Protestants, Unionists and Loyalists. Denominational religion and politics has the potential to divide, but surely it's our values that unite us on those issues. The core value which unites us is our position on violence, the sanctity of human life, and I know that is shared by your party leader. Because if that fundamental issue is in place and agreed, then actually the rest of it can be debated, can be argued for, and can be pursued in line with exclusively democratic means. In the 1970s and into the 1980s, and I can just about remember the 80s, so I'm a child of 1980. Obviously there was a bearded man and other members within the provisional Irish Republican movement who were muted at that point. They were not given the oxygen for propaganda publicity. It was curtailed. Now he and others in 2022 can openly revel, justify the campaign of terror waged against the community. And let's all remember this, that the Provisional IRA murdered more Roman Catholics than any other organisation over the course of the terror campaign. Folks, as a standard, and I think this comes to us all in this room, we need to be louder in our submission that there was no justification for the use of criminal violence in the pursuance of or defence of a political objective. Language, folks, is what this place is all about, isn't it? What other place in the world has got a particular city which has 7 names? Do you know? It's rather strange. But words and terms such as terrorism, terrorist, the terrorist campaign, ethnic cleansing, murder, have all been but eliminated by the establishment. Think about it over those periods of time. And when you look back at the old news reports when murders were carried out in the 80s, right across the spectrum, it was called for what it was. But fast forward 35, 40 years later, and where have we got to? How has that been allowed to happen? These words now are replaced with conflict. Well, the area that I come from, or not come from certainly in Upper South Armagh, but the area that the roots of our organisation represent, South East Fermanagh, and indeed what Trevor spoke to in terms of Castledurg. Where was the conflict? The statistics, folks, don't lie. There was a one-way campaign of ethnic genocide. Now, just as we say that, we also, and this is the challenge, folks, need to also recognise that in other parts of our country, other issues were at prevail, and there were also people who came from a Roman Catholic community who were victims of genocide. I believe it may have been Norman Tebbit, once government minister and survivor himself of the Brighton Hotel bombing, who said this: "You see, we militarily defeated the Provisional IRA, but then subsequent governments allowed them to dictate their own terms of surrender." How true is that? Does it not coin where we've got to today? And that, sadly, is a trait of our UK state, whether it's in the context of this terror campaign or in situations prior to that. They are not the best at dealing with the aftermath, are they?
No.
So peeling it back, in essence the process has been corrupted by a very well-resourced provisional IRA propaganda machine with the objective of turning history on its head. And too many have stood back and allowed it to happen. It's not enough to be straight with you. When I hear, sometimes I cringe listening to the radio, and I hear that soundbite said, they're rewriting history. Okay, fact it is. Then I ask the second question, what are you doing about it? What are you practically doing about it to try and reverse that change, that slow movement? And then there's a knot of silence. Just a few ideas, folks, I want to speak about in that regard, and Trevor has touched on the legacy legislation and the impending legislation must have come before Parliament. Now, if you're to listen to what you're believing, over this last period of time, there certainly is a little bit of unease coming within elements of the government party, certainly within their backbenchers, around the implications of some of these issues. But how that all finally dusts down, we are unclear. But we are very clear as an organisation, and Trevor speaks absolutely right. No matter how many support services you run for victims and survivors, they must be in conjunction with justice, truth and accountability being pursued in its fullest terms. There must be no amnesty, no statute of limitation, which would have the impact of equating legitimate members of the security forces with those who have been involved with prescribed terror organisations. I remember once having a conversation with someone about the difference between a death which was caused by a member of the security forces in a horrendous situation where there was a riot and a child lost its life. And it's simple as this. The hurt for that family, let's also acknowledge, is exactly the same pain as the pain that's caused by any other premeditated murder. But that is the trick, premeditated murder. And I challenge that individual, do you believe that the soldier, when he was standing before the mirror that morning and doing what I should have done this morning and had a shave, do you think that by the end of that day he knew within his heart and his mind that he was going to have taken the life of that child? And the answer was no. And I said, now let's look at the circumstance of a terrorist, where there is recce's carried out, where there is a community often of support in terms of the different elements of that assassination, and certainly that was the case in Castleberg in southeast Vermont. That terrorist, his objective, his employment, his job was by the start of that day, by the end of that day, to have committed that particular act. That's the difference, folks. In County Fermanagh, where we owe our roots, 95% of crimes committed by the provisional IRA remain unresolved. 95%. So when people talk about the lack of justice and accountability in certain sectors of the victims' survivor population, let that statistic also be known. That's the realities of what happened there. And Castleberg, I think, is very comparable in that, Trevor. So going forward, what are the areas that can maybe do something to change the landscape in which these issues are fought? We're clear. The 2006 definition of victim remains as abhorrent in 2022 as it But that leg in itself isn't enough, because that definition, I submit to you, will never change in this jurisdiction. In this country, it will never change. How it can change is at national, UK-wide level. And the means by which it can change is that the context of the Northern Ireland Terror Campaign is set within the wider acts of terrorism which our nation has been subjected to over the last 30, 40 years. That's IS-inspired terror, it's Al-Qaeda-inspired terror. No longer should Northern Ireland be treated as something different. throughout the process of the consultational legacy. There must be an acknowledgement process at the start, not at the end, not political, choreographed nonsense at the end where there's absolutely no heart to any acknowledgement that's made. At the start, all the protagonists must acknowledge the illegitimacy of the use of violence in the furtherance or defence of a political objective. If we have that in place, we have a foundation to build upon. If we don't have that, we're going to continue to lie to one another. Now, I'm looking in the room and I saw and was pleased to see earlier as well that there are a number of young people. And that's the challenge for all of us and all we do, that there are actually more young people at these events. So those of you who are involved in UDR associations, REC welfare groups, I say this respectfully, look at your demographic and look at how you transcend those issues and the concern for those issues to the next generation. Because if you don't, it's a bit like this place, it's on borrowed time. We have got to have a vision right across the spectrum of how we bring on our young people. So how's our troubles taught, as it's referred euphemistically, the troubles, the terror campaign? How's it taught within our school environment or not taught? Again, there must be a movement on that issue. So the historical timeline actually that was proposed under Stormont House, we had, as you know, strong objections to many issues within that document. But there are a couple of things that have flowed, the regional trauma network and also the potential for a historical timeline. Needs to be given serious consideration. We need a statistical and factual analysis of the troubles. And the narratives will undoubtedly continue to flow from that. But we need a baseline. That's essential. The Republic of Ireland state, I'm going to move to them now. And this continued portrayal of itself as a neutral onlooker and broker, almost as quality proof for what the UK government does or does not do. That's not the space that it exists. Because we need to look at security and extradition policy over the period of the Troubles. The refusal to extradite individuals who then went on to continue to commit systemic terrorism. That's a reality. Trevor also touched on it, the early years of the Troubles, in terms of the birth and formation of the Provisional IRA, the training, the arming, the financing. All of that has never had a forensic lens put under it. And that must happen. Yep. But folks, let us also be clear. Our own UK government are also very far from flawless. Wrong must be owned and accounted for and effectively dealt with now. Because if it fails to be done, then it will provide the means for a vacuum and for the truth of these matters to be filled with propagated lies. So they need to come out clearly and deal with it in the rounds at this point in my view. Folks, I'm conscious of a full programme and I'm not going to detain you any longer. What I want to leave you is with these few words. Let's be clear that a truly sustainable peace cannot be brought about merely by the absence of terrorism, but by the presence of justice. Thank you.
There and go over and take a wee look at them. So thanks, Kenny, for bringing those along. Thank you. Our next speaker needs very little introduction. He has led this party with great determination for 15 years. He's been loyal to his country, fought through many an obstacle, and he has stood tall on the shoulders of unionism. Please put your hands together for our party leader, Jim Allison.
today, it would be remiss of me not to begin my remarks by failing to refer to the dreadful situation in Ukraine. Here today we meet in safety, in freedom, in liberty, while in the opposite corner of Europe we have the brutal oppression of a free people. The murderous excesses of a tyrant and the cruel ravages of war. As a community that withstood the terror of the IRA, itself with Soviet tendencies, we salute the courage and the resilience of the Ukrainian people. And we pray God that they may be delivered from the evil machinations of the war criminal Putin. Turning to more local issues, Mr. Chairman, we face a most crucial election in this province in just 54 days. 54 days. That's shorter and more certain than a Jeffrey Donaldson deadline. And speaking of Sir Jeffrey, I want to assure you I have had no transfer negotiations. Because I don't captain a sinking ship. But a sound vessel of principle, strength, and integrity. Not driven by division and intrigue, but bound together in unity and purpose. And I'm delighted that among our showing of candidates, we have people like Harold McKee, Trevor Clark, and Radcliffe. We gave up on the rudderless to join the good ship TUV. Get behind these candidates. Every one of them needs your support, they need your work, they need the maximum effort. We can do it. Let's do it in the coming years. And let's wipe the smile of our naysayers and some ill-informed, arrogant commentators who would write TUV off. Even one of them I see here today. Not over here. But he's here to play catch-up in respect of a party that hitherto he has studiously ignored and denigrated. And others, of course, like Irish news columnist Brian Feeney. He demands Soviet-style censorship to remove TUV from the airwaves. Well, something that the producers of Good Morning Ulster do on a day and daily basis. I've got news for our detractors. TUV is not in this election to make up the numbers. TUV is here to win. Promise you one thing, Stormont will never be the same again. By winning seats in this election, we not only advance the cause of traditional unionism, but we keep some others honest. Or as honest as they can be. Isn't it remarkable how the rising polls for TUV induced others to harden their stand on the iniquitous protocol?
That's right.
They even want now to sing off our hymn sheet.
Yep.
Let me come to the protocol, ladies and gentlemen, because there is nothing more challenging to the integrity of this kingdom than this iniquitous protocol. Our consistent stand on the protocol is not election-led. Principle, not expediency, is our guide. TV has led the way in legal and political challenge. Action, not dither, has been our watchword. From the start, we saw the protocol for what it is. An instrument to break up this United Kingdom. A device to leave Northern Ireland aligned with the Republic under the foreign sovereignty of the EU. And designed, of course, to force an economic All-Ireland as a stepping stone to Irish unity. That is what it is all about. The economic disadvantage is real, and the further it beds in, gets worse. Because remember, we're still, because of the grace periods, only in the shallows of the protocol. Let me just take a couple of issues to illustrate the pernicious impact of the protocol. We are in the EU's VAT regime. That means we are governed by all the rules and bureaucracy of that VAT regime. That means that the EU rule in their VAT regime that you cannot reduce VAT below 5%. Means that if our government was ever minded, as they should, to take VAT off home heating fuel and electricity, it would apply everywhere except in Northern Ireland. Because we are under the foreign jurisdiction of the foreign VAT regime. Let me take another example. From what is happening in Ukraine, a breadbasket of Europe. Huge reliance by the rest of the world is based upon the maize that is produced and grown in Ukraine. The things as they are, the upcoming harvest is likely to be devastating. those who trade in these commodities are already looking to instead buy maize from the United States of America. But the EU has a 25% tariff on USA maize, which means that if maize is required from the USA for feedstuffs for animals in Northern Ireland, it would be subjected to a 25% EU tariff. It wouldn't be in the rest of the United Kingdom, but it would be here. Those are but two small illustrations of the dire economic consequences of the protocol. But of course, where the real consequence is in respect of the constitutional impact of the protocol. I can best illustrate that to you in this way. This is said to be the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But under this pernicious protocol, Great Britain, when it comes to trading with Northern Ireland, is now designated a third or foreign country. To bring goods from the rest of our nation to this part of our nation, the EU says we are bringing them from a foreign jurisdiction into their territory, the EU. Because we have been put within the EU single market for goods subject to their customs code. Now, does it get any more stark than that? That the other part of our country is deemed under this protocol to be a foreign place. So that when you bring goods, you might as well be bringing them from Bolivia as bringing them from Britain, because they're subject to the same checks on foreign goods. That is how constitutionally appalling this protocol is. And of course, that is in utter conflict with the fundamental economic guarantee of this union, which is Article 6 of the Acts of Union, which says the basis of our economic union is free and unfettered trade between and within all parts of the UK. The protocol is to fetter that trade and to guarantee that we are treated as a foreign place in respect of the rest of the kingdom. So there is no unionist, surely, and certainly none in this party, who ever can or will come to terms with that obscenity of being treated as a foreign part within our United Kingdom. And all that will... And all that will only get worse as the United Kingdom, the rest of it, diverges from EU rules, and we are tethered to them by this. Hence, Mr. Chairman, the total folly of the complicity of some in ever implementing this union dismantling protocol. Opposition from day one to the Putz posts. The same Mr. Putz is now looking at in an outpost called South Belfast. But make no mistake about it. It was the Putz posts which enabled this iniquitous protocol to bed in. It is that which was one of the fundamental missteps in opposing this protocol. Sleepwalking. Sleepwalking, ladies and gentlemen, never ends well.
No.
And we've seen some remarkably ill-judged pontifications on the protocol, but none more absurd than Doug Beatty's, suggesting that the answer to the protocol was another north-south body to oversee it.
Oh, shit. Silly man.
That's not unalterable rejection. That's facilitation. And in the same vein lies the delusion of the best of both worlds. Unfettered access to the EU's shrinking market comes at the unpayable price of subjugation to EU laws, to EU processes, to the EU court. Isn't that the very thing Brexit was supposed to deliver us from? Isn't that what we were meant to escape from, not embrace? Isn't that what taking back control is meant to as the best of both worlds unless you want to be subjugated to EU laws that you don't make, can't change, overseen by a foreign court. Those are the only circumstances in which you get what is called the best of both worlds. It's a fiction and something that holds no attraction for anyone who cares about the integrity of this union. That is why this protocol can never be acceptable or made acceptable or made compatible with being an integral part of the United Kingdom, because it makes us subject to foreign jurisdiction, foreign single market, foreign customs code, foreign VAT regime, all ruled over by foreign laws we don't make and can't change, and supervised by a foreign court. That is no place for any free people who believe in their fundamental right of making and governing through our own laws, not foreign colonial laws. That is something that no one who cares about the most basic fundamentals of democratic accountability could or should ever contemplate, never mind advocate. And yet we have parties, one of them with the very word democratic in its title, the Social Democratic and Labour Party, ready and eager to prostrate themselves before the EU, accept their yoke of bondage, to accept being ruled by laws we don't make and can't change. That is how preposterous the rigorous implementers are. They say, okay, 2/3 of the rules that govern our economy may now be made not in Belfast, not in London, but in Brussels, but let's have more of it, they say. How appalling for anyone who wants to be elected to a legislative assembly, who wants to say, but I want to hand away the power to legislate on 2/3 of our economy. That's what the SDLP, that's what Sinn Féin, that's what the Alliance parties stand for in respect of this protocol. Let me be very clear. TUV has always been plain that if the price of Stormont is implementing this protocol, then it's a price no unionist can pay or ever should have paid. And yet this week we've had the Ulster Unionist leader on the Sinn Féin bandwagon, urging abandonment of the protest, of the very small protest of removing the First Minister. I say this to you, the UP needs to go a lot further than removing the First Minister. price of storming, and as long as the protocol stays, it is the price of storming, is implementing this union dismantling protocol, then that is something in which no unionist should be aiding and abetting and assisting.
Here, here.
And if hard choices have to be made, then make them.
Here, here.
You sometimes hear talk about Article 16. Let me be clear with you. Article 16 is but a step. It's not a solution. It presses the pause button and then embarks on further years of endless negotiation. What we need from the British government in respect of this protocol is much more than Article 16. What we need is repudiation. And even with Article 16, if it ever comes, this battle would not be over. And it will not be over until the EU gives up its ill-gotten sovereignty over this place.
Here, here.
And the test of any tinkering, the test of those who say they've got a solution, is a very simple one. Does it still leave us in a foreign single market for goods? Does it still leave us subject to a foreign customs code and VAT regime? Does it still leave us ruled by foreign laws we don't make and can't change? Does it still leave us with all that supervised by a foreign court? And if it does, then it's not a settlement, it's a cover-up. Ladies and gentlemen, this protocol is irredeemable. It must go. No ifs, no buts. I say to people who are concerned about the protocol, going forward, rely on those who called it right from the beginning. TUV is the real deal on this and so much more.
Here, here.
And of course, equally, I would suggest to you, TUV is the real deal when it comes to the storm and shambles and the dysfunctionalism and the failure of that system. Let me be very clear with you. This storm, as constituted, will never work. Simple reason. Sinn Féin is not there to make Northern Ireland work. And therefore, any system which relies for its very existence on the grace and favour of Sinn Féin is never going to work. Of course, the absurdity and the unworkability of mandatory coalition has been manifested time after time by the constant stutter and failure of Stormont. And it has only ever been kept going. And this is something every unionist needs to remember. It has only ever been kept going and brought back by paying the Sinn Féin ransom. TUV is very clear. If this Stormont can't be fixed, then it's not worth having. There is a way to fix it. Astoundingly, to some, it's the basic democratic premise. A coalition of the willing. Because we have a Stormont at the moment, we don't have to be agreed about anything to be in government. And then the commentators and others are surprised that when they are in government they can't agree. So there is a way to fix it. Voluntary coalition with a vigorous, properly resourced opposition. But if that is too much for those who demand power for themselves at any price, then we've nothing left to give. Let's be clear. Much done. Warner referred to it. Oh, there could be a Sinn Féin First Minister. There already is a Sinn Féin First Minister. First Minister can't even sign a letter without the deputy co-signing it. Can't order a stamp. Can't lick an envelope without doing it together. So no one be deluded into thinking there is this great hierarchy of First Minister and Deputy First Minister. Now, of course, for the psychology and all that, no one wants a Sinn Féin First Minister. Nobody in this room wants a Sinn Féin Deputy First Minister. No! Because it's a joint office, there can only ever be a Sinn Féin First Minister, even if they were the biggest party. If they find some stooge of a unionist party to fill the post of deputy. For those who go around the country and will go around the country saying, we must make sure there's no Sinn Féin First Minister, I have a very simple question to answer. Well, will you enthrone them by being Deputy First Minister? That's the question for every doorstep. When they say, you must vote for us to stop Sinn Féin being First Minister. Very interesting. What will you do to stop them if they were the biggest party? Will you nominate a Deputy First Minister? Now tell me, answer the question, yes or no. TUV has no difficulty answering that question. I can tell you, this party will never be bridesmaid for Sinn Féin. Today to other unionist leaders, will they assure the unionist people of the same? It's a question that can't be dodged. It's a question they need to face. And when they dodge it, you can infer what the real answer is.
That's right.
Of course, some people, some wonderful commentators say, oh, that would be so undemocratic not to nominate a Deputy First Minister. Don't talk to me about democracy and Stormont. In the system of mandatory coalition, you're denied the most fundamental tenet of voting in any election anywhere else in the world, namely the right to change your government. Party out of government.
Yes.
Yes.
So when they fix those two glaring contradictions of democracy and give this province and its people the right to change their government, and you can't have it under mandatory coalition, because so long as they've got a handful of MLAs, they're decreed as of right an entitlement to government. So until and unless we get those fundamental democratic rights to change your government and vote a party out of government, then TUV will take no lessons from anyone about democracy. I would unashamedly refuse to nominate a deputy in order to enthrone Sinn Féin. It all comes back to these words: principle, integrity, and having the strength to do the right thing. And every voter in this election should remember, you get what you vote for. There's no point in people going around this country saying, what a terrible thing if there's a Sinn Féin First Minister, and they themselves being in a party that's prepared to allow a Sinn Féin First Minister. There's no point in saying, as the little poster on the wall says, I hope for change. No, you have to do much more than hope. You have to vote for change. People in this province have had enough of storm and squander and storm and failure and pandering to Sinn Féin. Then they need to do more than hope. They need to vote to change. That is the opportunity that I and my 18 candidate colleagues are giving every voter in this constituency. Remember, you do get what you vote for. Trust is everything in politics. This party has earned the trust of the Unionist people because of the consistency of our stand, even when we stand alone. Better to have truth and principle for company than expediency and duplicity. TUV, it is principle before power. No fudging on the protocol at Moscow. No more pandering to Sinn Féin. Unionism has nothing left to give. And there's no better way of demonstrating that. There's no better way to guarantee that unionism is going to dig in, draw a line in the sand, which is immovable and not be shifted with further concessions than to vote TUV on the 5th of May. Fellow delegates, we're in the great position that there is a rising tide of support for this party across this province. I have a simple message for you. Go back to your constituencies and work for victory. Thank you.
Jim, for the rousing speech, and I encourage each and every one of you here today to go to lead this conference today to fulfill your obligations.
Go surrender.
Before we break for lunch, can I ask the candidates to just stay behind before we go to lunch? And please, we would like to get a photograph. And all could just also follow the direction of the staff, because there's two places where we're going to have our buffet, one downstairs and upstairs, so just please take a direction from the staff